Have you ever felt personally persecuted because of your beliefs and what you stand for? At least you weren't thrown into a den with live lions. Today we'll be discussing Daniel and his life on Zola Levitt Presents.
From the beginning, our Creator revealed His will to the common man. Individuals who listened to His call and responded in obedience. From the first Hebrew Avraham to the culmination of salvation in Messiah Himself, the Lord faithfully intervenes with His divine deliverance.
Shalom and welcome to Zola Levitt Presents. I'm David Hart.
I'm Kirsten Hart.
Jeffrey Seif.
We're in our series Divine Deliverance, and today we hear about the life of Daniel.
Yes, and to our co-host's introduction about him being persecuted.
Right.
Do you know the word persecute means to be utterly pursued, and the forces of hell were after him, weren't they?
Right, and I love how he ties into the theme of this whole series, divine deliverance. The divine delivered him from the lions. He should have been dead, and God said, not yet, not his time. Now, Daniel was in captivity, and he longed for Jerusalem. Here is some of his story.
And Daniel went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime.
I will lift up my eyes to the hills. From whence does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. It's a beautiful psalm. Once, by the way, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move my body from the neck down. All I could lift were my eyes. And a friend of mine, Paul Wilbur, sung that song, and I listened to it all the time. Daniel never heard that song, but he lifted his eyes to the Lord in good times and in bad. The Bible tells us 3 times a day. It was a habit. Seems that many of us have lost that in modernity. We see God when we need Him. For Daniel, it was a point. And he didn't just seek the Lord, not to minimize just seeking the Lord, but he faced toward Jerusalem. Even people who seek the Lord, and I'm pleased they do, many have lost their focus toward Jerusalem. Not me, hopefully not you. We're going to see what comes out of that focus as we look at divine deliverance and focus specifically on the ministry and word of the prophet Daniel.
Civilizations collided in the ancient world. As today, nations lift swords against nations. Wars and rumors of wars abound. Looking at the world through Daniel's prophecies, we learn how, as the battle rages on, God still watches over and protects His people, Israel.
When we open up the book of Daniel, we hear of the clash of titanic forces, titans going at it. It's not the kind of thing people really look for in religion. People are more predisposed to look for comfort. The word comfort comes from a Latin word meaning with fortification. In other words, there's enough troubles in the world. People go to church to take a step out of the world and transcend into the divine. What happens when you enter into the divine? That is the divine testimony anyway. And what do you read about? Troubles in the world. It's like you're not running very far till you see it again. In fact, not only do we find it in Daniel, but Yeshua, Jesus, mirrors Daniel as well when he talks about in the latter days, wars coming, Jerusalem surrounded, the world upended by trials and tribulations, and then finally, Just when it looks like all is lost, then the Redeemer comes, makes his entrance onto the stage of the human drama. We see these pictures in the Daniel text where Daniel envisions beasts that are vile and gross. He sees horrible things. He sees animals clashing, and all of that is a picture of a world to come. In chapter 8, he says, Chazon nira Eli, and that is, a vision appeared to me. And in his case, it wasn't a creative imagination, it was a divine stamp. And he gives a window in things to come. Now, Daniel, of course, is an exile prophet like Ezekiel is, and they're both displaced, and they're asking the question, God, do you have plans for Israel to come? And the answer is yes. This prophet gives voice to a deliverance that emerges out of turbulent times. He says in chapter 8, in verse 19, behold, I am going to inform you about what will happen in the latter time, the time of wrath. Again, he sees an upended world. And what does the seeing do? It prompts him to do something. Just like we began this program in the 9th chapter, we hear Daniel praying, seeking the Lord. Some are better at that than others. You know, my wife is quite the prayer warrior. Frankly, the way I'm wired, I'd rather think it through in so many ways. But like Daniel, Daniel just didn't pray when he felt bad and a need and a crisis. It was a habit 3 times a day. And I mentioned that with my wife, I'm telling you. I look at Barry and I say, you are the way, the truth, and the wife. And I mention that every morning we get up, and she's so pious. She has us to take the Lord's Supper together, and there's prayer and Bible reading. She just leads me to it. She led herself by those still waters all of her life, and I'm glad to bear her influence. Well, I have my Daniel in the form of Barry, by the way, and Israel had their Daniel here in the 9th chapter. We get into his intercessory heart for the people of Israel, and it's out of his interceding for Israel that God gives him a vision for what's going to happen with Israel and his plan for redeeming the people in the time to come. It's a tough story. He hears wars and rumors of wars. And noteworthy in the vision that unfolds is this nefarious personality will emerge. He speaks of Israel reconstituted, a temple built, only to then be defiled by a wicked one. The Hebrews are pushed to the brink subsequent to that. But then redemption comes. There's a Jewish holiday that gives voice to that. They're the Maccabees that were overrun. Israel was overrun by the Syrians by dint of determination, but the Hebrews took to arms, a small band, and they had a good measure of success. When the Syrians took over, they inhabited a rebuilt temple. They defiled it grossly. And, Daniel envisions that, but he sees that and past that to a world to come at the ragged age of time when there's a particular wrath that descends upon the world. One will emerge known in the Newer Testament as the Antichrist. Yes, one day the devil has his day, but there's a clash of spiritual forces. And at the ragged edge of time, the devil who had his day loses his way, and he's bested by the Prince of Peace, who one day will come and make his entrance onto the stage of the human drama. For historical purposes, you read in the Bible, he's coming soon. How long is soon? It was said 2,000 years ago. The answer to that question is as follows. If you find yourself amidst the turbulence of trying times, in the middle of a spiritual warfare of a sort, if you feel overrun by sin and circumstances and you have little more than prayer, I'd suggest you to use it, because relative to the Lord saying, I am coming soon, I don't know exactly when he's coming to planet Earth. There's reason to think it's sooner than later. But the point is redemption for you is only a single prayer away.
Our offer on this program, the DVD series Daniel and the Last Days Battle for Planet Earth. This series of 8 programs features the teachings of Dr. Jeffrey Seif, with insightful studies based on Daniel's prophetic vision of end times events. Angels and demons, the Antichrist, the tribulation period, the Battle of Armageddon, the second coming of Christ. Ask for Daniel and the Last Days Battle for Planet Earth.
Hello, my name is Andrea Davis, and I've been working with Zola Levitt Ministries for over 20 years. For me, this is not just a career, it's a calling, and I'm so grateful for those who feel called alongside us. Your prayers and financial support help us produce informative, anointed television from Israel. So please continue to give as you are able, and let's continue this journey together. Thank you.
Because of your donations for this program, Zola Levitt Presents is literally reaching around the world with the good news of the gospel and the Jewish roots of our Christianity. Thank you for keeping that vision alive. Now let's go back to our dramatic reenactment where Daniel has visions of the future.
Little did they know, as they made ready for the battle to come, that the battle they anticipated was predicted thousands of years ago. They fought on, even as they feared that the darkness would likely overtake them. But then they realized they were living at the dawning of a brand new day.
So you're wondering, where did he get this rifle, Jeffrey? From my closet. Well, what are you doing with that? Well, years ago, when I went to my first police funeral, I decided to get one in the aftermath when some officers were killed in the Dallas area. I used an assault rifle. I had to test on it and get qualified to use it because I would work deep nights, go out there on the streets. When I was concerned, the way I was concerned, the only person that should have been up then was the bread man or the milkman or the paper man. Everybody else was a little suspicious, and my suspicions proved true on occasion. I wanted to make sure I had a good weapon if I needed it. And that's true as a rule of thumb. When we experience difficulties, we want to make sure we have good weapons. I'm sure I'll get some mail for this, by the way. Even the dramas, when you see wars and modern Israelis fighting, some people take issue with that, and I know I'll get some bad mail because I brought this to the set. And that's because many construe that what it means to be religious principally is to be docile and sheepish and let the world just roll over you. That perspective holds the high ground. It doesn't hold the high ground in my thinking. Going way back in time, even St. Augustine wrote a book called Just Wars, and he raised the question, when is it incumbent upon men of faith to bear arms in defense of home and hearth? Well, I'm not so much looking to bring an apology for the prop that I brought to the set as much as to give voice to why I did it. When we look in the book of Daniel, we do hear a world at war, and that's the bad news. And if you wonder why there's bad news in a good news book, eventually the world is going to look like it says in the Christmas cards, peace on earth and goodwill toward men. And that's going to happen because of the Prince of Peace. Isaiah announces about this mighty God and wonderful counselor and Prince of Peace. And one day he makes his way, but until then, Satan is the ruler of this world, and we do have to contend in a spiritual sense, certainly, Israel in a material sense. Daniel says as much in the end of the book. He gives voice to what the Lord says. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Daniel gives voice to a world at war, an antichrist, redemption to come, a rebuilt temple, an Israel nation state restored, a lot of stuff that you learn about when you watch Old Lever Presents. Daniel is told, listen, go your way. This story is for tomorrow. He goes on to say at the end, you go your way, in verse 13, till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of days, you will arise to receive your portion. He spoke earlier in the chapter that at the ragged edge of time, individuals arise from the dust of the earth, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. And that gives credence in the Older Testament to the notion of Tehiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead. Jewish folk will hear about the resurrection to life and go, I don't believe in that, I'm Jewish, that's just a Christian Easter story. Well, Daniel chapter 12, read the very beginning. The prophet says, many of those in the dust of the earth shall arise, some to everlasting life, some to everlasting contempt, in effect. And so it's divvied up that way. There is something of a judgment. This prophet is told, listen, you're going to run your race. You're going to live it, and one day you're going to arise and receive your reward. But this message is going to happen sometime in between, that is, before the resurrection of the last day. These words are not for you, they belong to the future. Friends, I can't help but wonder if the future is now. And I mention that because if we look at deliverance on planet Earth, we do well to personalize that, I grant. The question is personal deliverance. But God watches over His word to perform it, not just for individuals, but for those that are called into covenant with Him. And the Jews were called into covenant. There's land promises about a state. And we're living at a time today against all odds. Israel has been reconstituted as a nation state in that land. And to be sure, there's wars of rumors of wars, and it doesn't look like they're abating anytime soon. I'm not glorying in war, to tell you the truth, and I would hope to never pull this trigger outside of a firing range. I wouldn't want to do that. But I do know this. When someone's going into a battle, they need to take the best weapon they have. At the beginning of this program, I introduced you to a weapon greater than this. What am I talking about? Prayer. In the Bible, God is referred to as Adonai Tsevaot, the Lord of the armies. He who watches over His word to perform it can perform it with you, and He's the greatest weapon in the world. In fact, He's out of this world. One day He's coming back to this world, but He's here even now, one person at a time, and He's willing to make His home in you.
I am a church baby from week 2 of my life. I've been in Sunday school every Sunday, and the story of Daniel is one that I've heard for years. I remember a song called Dare to Be a Daniel. That was a Sunday school song.
Yeah,
You sang that.
Yeah. Also, I remember in 2nd grade, like it was yesterday, my Sunday school teacher teaching about Daniel. I was in awe of his miracle, of his story, of his life.
Yes, and I'm amazed that nobody knows what he's talking about, though they're all in awe of him. In many churches, even though Daniel is resurrected and the story is retold, what people lose sight of is the prophetic vision for the restoration of the state of Israel and how a wicked ruler is going to emerge, one we know as the Antichrist, to then defile what God is up to into the world. It's a story that Jews celebrate in their own way, in our own way, in the story of Hanukkah. Daniel, political intrigue, drama, trauma, it's all there. And we offer a telling of it in the Zola Levitt Ministries way.
And if the divine had not delivered him from the lion's den, we wouldn't have these prophecies about the end times. And
yes.
He had so many prophecies.
Daniel personally was delivered from the den of iniquity. And he gives voice to how Israel ultimately will be delivered from those who have her in their clutches. And it's the story of deliverance for planet Earth, culminating in the resurrection of the dead.
There's so much more than just the stories that we heard. You know, we reenacted the lions in the den, but God had such purpose for Daniel's life.
And it sounds like I kind of like maybe critically reflected on your experience. And if it even mildly sounded like that, I didn't mean to do that. Daniel is speaking to, for, and about the destiny of the Hebrew people in his own time and at the end of time. Now, there's an analogy there about standing strong in adversity that's timeless through the ages. But he is giving voice to a prophetic word in those pages about the people Israel. And unfortunately, that's lost in many Bible tellings.
This series has talked about heroes. This whole series, I would say that Daniel is a hero.
Yes, he personifies that heroic spirit, and he gives voice to God's plan of the ages that extends to individuals and to the nation of Israel on the whole.
There's still more to our program. Stay with us.
We would personally love to invite you to join us on a Zola Levitt tour. We go to Greece, Israel, and Petra. We have such a great time, and we would love for you to join us.
Recently, I was in Israel and had the opportunity to record a song by our founder, Zola Levitt.
Lord, I hear you sighing with every breath that flows, longing for the ones you love, the precious ones you chose. Lord, I hear you crying for Jerusalem, your land, looking down from on the hill, your sacrifice at hand. Lord, I hear you weeping, sorrow for what might have been, your hand outstretched upon the cross, reaching for the sons of men. Lord, I hear you praying for those who are so lost, to simply ask, forgive me, Lord, I understand the cost.
Bible believers have been amazed by Daniel for thousands of years. Hope we've had your attention for 28 minutes. And as we put a wrap on this component, I'm particularly struck by Daniel's focus, his faith, his piety, even as he found himself amidst the turbulence of trying times, he kept his eyes focused. And guys, I think that made all the difference.
Right. He was a survivor.
Yes.
And I think what gives us hope is he was a real man. We see him as a Bible character with the lions, and we read stories about him, but it was a real man that was very devout to his God.
Yes, and in the process of living out that personal faith and piety, he's bounced around amongst other real people who were wicked, who were unkindly disposed toward him. And is a man who's beaten and battered by sin and circumstance, but still he prevails because of something within that person.
And God divinely delivered him.
Right.
Yes.
From those trials.
And really, I think his trials were teaching moments about divine deliverance for planet Earth. That comes through in his message, doesn't it?
Yes. But for now,
as we go, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter, is free and full of insightful articles and news commentary from a messianic perspective. Visit levitt.com to find our newsletter, along with current and past programs, our television schedule, and much more.
Don't forget to order this week's resource by calling 1-800-WONDERS, or you can purchase it from our store at levitt.com.
Your donations to Zola Levitt Ministries help these organizations bless Israel.
Thanks again for joining us this week. Zola Levitt Ministries and this television program depend on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.
This has been a paid program brought to you by Zola Levitt Ministries.